In this lesson, you'll learn how to play Alone Again naturally, using 3 beautiful fingerpicking patterns or an easy strumming pattern. We'll also take a look at tips on how to play the fingerstyle solo that appears after the bridge. And then you can join me for a play along where I'll play and sing through the entire song, and you can play along with me. Throughout this lesson, I'll be using my tenor with low G tuning. If you have high G tuning on your instrument, you can follow this entire lesson. The only apparent difference will be when playing pattern 2, but it will still sound beautiful on high G tuning. The solo only uses strings 1, 2, and 3, so it won't matter if you have high or low G tuning to play the solo, as we won't use the 4th string. Now let's start by taking a look at our patterns. One thing to keep in mind is that every chord in this song is held for 4 beats, and every pattern covers 4 beats. So the patterns are interchangeable. If you'd like, you can pick any one pattern to use throughout the song, or you can alternate between them, as we'll cover in this lesson. Now let's take a look at all 4 of our patterns on an F chord. Starting with pattern 1, we're going to pick all 4 strings twice. The rhythm of this pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here's pattern 2. For this pattern, we're going to start by picking string 4 with our thumb, then string 3 with our index finger, and then strings 1 and 2 together. The rhythm of this pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now pattern 3. For this pattern, we'll start on string 3 with our thumb, then string 2 with our index finger, string 1 with our middle finger, and back to string 2 with our index finger. The rhythm of this pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally, if you want to strum the song, you'll play down strums on beats 1 and 3, similar to pattern 1. So the rhythm will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, we'll take a look at the beautiful chord progression that's used in the verses and how to play the chords. Starting with our F chord, here I have my index finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string and my middle finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. We'll move from F to A minor and do that by lifting up our index finger, keeping our middle finger in place on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. Next, we'll move to C minor. C minor is a bar chord, so you can see that I have my index finger barring the 3rd fret on strings 1, 2, and 3. If you'd like, you can also use your middle finger for additional support against your index finger. We move from C minor to D7 sus4 by sliding our index finger back 1 fret. Here we're going to bar all 4 strings on the 2nd fret, and we're going to place our middle and ring fingers down on the 3rd fret of strings 1 and 2. From D7 sus4, we'll go to D7 simply by lifting up our middle finger, keeping our index finger and our ring finger in place. Our next chord is G minor. Here I have my index finger on the 1st fret of the 1st string, my ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and my middle finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. From G minor, we move to B flat minor by barring all 4 strings on the 1st fret and placing down our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 4th string. In line 4, we're moving back to an F chord, and this time I'm going to use my ring finger rather than my middle finger to play the 2nd fret of the 4th string. This allows me to simply place down my middle finger on the 1st fret of the 3rd string to move into our F augmented chord that comes next. In line 5, we're moving to a D minor chord. Here I've kept my index finger in place from our F augmented chord, and then I'm placing down my middle and ring fingers on the 2nd fret of strings 3 and 4. Then we move from D minor to E7. For E7, I have my index finger on the 1st fret of the 4th string and my middle and ring fingers on the 2nd fret of strings 3 and 1. In line 6, we move to an A minor 7 chord, which is all open strings. Then we go back to C minor, and then to D7. In line 7, we go back to G minor, then back to B flat minor, and then in line 8, we go to our F chord with our standard fingering, then to D minor, then A minor 7, and now we come to a D chord. To play D, I have my index, middle, and ring fingers on the 2nd fret of strings 4, 3, and 2. And then our final line of the verses, we're going to G minor, and then we have a C sharp diminished 7th chord. To play this chord, I have my index and middle fingers on the 1st fret of strings 3 and 1. And then we finish the verses on our F chord. Now that we know how to play the chords in the verses, let's take a look at how to apply our patterns. Throughout the song, every chord is held for 4 beats. You'll see numbers in blue indicating patterns 1, 2, or 3. If you want to strum the song, then you can ignore the blue numbers and simply use the strumming pattern on every chord. For the chords in bold font, if you're strumming the song, then you'll play 1 down strum. Or if you're finger picking the song, then you'll pick all 4 strings only 1 time. This gives us a nice musical pause before moving on to the next chord and the next pattern. So starting with our introduction, we have 4 chords. We begin with F using pattern 1. Then we go to A minor 7, still on pattern 1. Then we go to C sharp diminished 7th, still on pattern 1. And then we finish the introduction by picking all 4 strings on F. The rhythm of the introduction is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now starting with our verses, in line 1 we have an F chord and we're going to play pattern 2. Then we'll play the same pattern again on F, then twice on A minor. In line 2, we're going to C minor with pattern 1, twice. Then we go to D7 sus 4, still on pattern 1, then to D7. So counting out the rhythm for lines 1 and 2 looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll continue to apply patterns 1 and 2 to all of the chords in the verses based on the numbers that you see in blue next to the chord names. For the chords in bold, we'll play either one down strum or we'll pick all 4 strings one time. If you're enjoying this lesson, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, then welcome. I'm Lara. I'm a musician, a composer, and a ukulele teacher, and I hope you have fun exploring my channel, my song arrangements, and my tutorials. If you'd like to download the song sheet for Alone Again Naturally, including the lyrics, chords, patterns, and tabs for the solo, you can do so from my Patreon page, along with my songbook covering all of the tutorials that I've shared. You'll find the link down below in the video description. After the first verse, we have a second verse, which is played the same way as the first, and then we come to our bridge, where the melody takes on a different direction. Next, we'll look at how to play the chords in the bridge and how to apply pattern 3. For the bridge, we're going to use pattern 3. This pattern uses strings 3, 2, and 1. So for all of the chords in the bridge, we don't have to worry about placing our fingers on any of the frets on the 4th string, because we won't be using that string. We start the bridge on a G sharp chord. To play this chord, you'll use the same chord shape as a G chord, but we're moving it up 1 fret. We'll play our pattern twice on G sharp in the first line. In line 2, we'll go to an E flat chord. Here I have my index finger on the 1st fret of the 1st string, and my middle and ring fingers on the 3rd fret of strings 2 and 3. We'll play our E flat chord twice, and now we'll move to B flat minor. Now here, because we're only playing the first 3 strings, we don't have to bar the chord. So I have my index, middle, and ring fingers on the 1st fret of strings 1, 2, and 3. We'll play our pattern just once on B flat minor. Then we'll lift up our middle finger, forming our C sharp diminished 7th chord. We'll play our pattern once on this chord, and then we'll go to F minor. Here I have my index finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, and my ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. We'll play our pattern twice on F minor. Then in line 3, we'll go to a C chord, lifting up our index finger. We'll play our pattern twice on C, and then in line 4, we go to a G minor chord, playing our pattern just once on G minor, and then we have our final C chord that ends the bridge. Here I'm going to play all 4 strings. After the bridge, we move into our beautiful fingerstyle solo. Now if you're not familiar with how to read tabs, then I'll put a link above to my tutorial that walks you through it. We're going to look at how to play the more difficult parts of the solo, so you may want to jump ahead and listen to the solo first in the play along at this timestamp, and then come back to this section. The first thing I want to highlight in the solo is that we're starting off with a hammer-on the 2nd string. So I'm picking the 2nd string with my index finger on the 1st fret, and then I'm hammering onto the 3rd fret using my ring finger. Now if you're not comfortable with hammer-ons, you can simply pick each note. This hammer-on the 2nd string is used again in measures 2, 3, and 4. In measure 5, we have another hammer-on, this time on the 1st string. Here we're starting with our index finger on the 3rd fret, and we're hammering onto the 5th fret using our ring finger. Now once again here, if you're not comfortable with a hammer-on, you can pick each note. The next section I want to highlight is the end of measure 13, moving into measure 14, as there are two different fingerings you can choose from for your fret hand. We're starting on the 5th fret of the 3rd string. I'm using my index finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string and my ring finger and pinky on the 5th fret of strings 2 and 3. If you prefer, you can switch out your middle finger and ring finger on the 5th fret of strings 2 and 3. Measure 15 is exactly the same as measure 14, so starting at the end of measure 13 through measure 15 at a slow tempo looks like this. In measure 17, we have our first slide on the 5th fret of the 1st string. So we'll pick the 1st string, and then we'll pick it again, sliding our ring finger up to the 7th fret, and then go back down to the 5th fret. As an easy alternative to doing the slide, you can simply pick frets 5, 7, and 5. In measures 22 and 23, we have a series of pull-offs. Here we have our ring finger on the 5th fret of the 1st string and our index finger on the 3rd fret. When we pick the 1st string, we'll pull off with our ring finger. Then we'll move down to frets 3 and 1, doing another pull-off. And then our final pull-off is from the 1st fret of the 1st string to the open 1st string. As an alternative to the pull-offs, you can skip the grace notes, which would look like this. In the final measure of our solo, we have another slide from the 5th to the 7th fret on the 1st string. From there we go right into singing the final line of the verses using our patterns. So here's how it looks to move through the end of the solo into the final line. Alone again, naturally. Now we're moving into our play along. I'm going to play through the entire song using finger picking patterns 1, 2, and 3 as they appear next to the chord names. If you prefer to strum the song, then use the strumming pattern that we covered once on every chord. For the chords that appear in bold font, you'll play either one down strum or fingerpick all 4 strings just one time. 5, 6, 7, 8. In a little while from now, if I'm not feeling any less sour, I promise myself to treat myself and visit a nearby tower. And climbing to the top, will throw myself off in an effort to make it clear to whoever what it's like when you're shattered, left standing in the lurch at a church where people sing, my God, that's tough, she stood him up, no point in us remaining, we may as well go home, as I did on my own, alone again, naturally. To think that only yesterday I was cheerful, bright and gay, looking forward to who wouldn't do the role I was about to play. But as if to knock me down, reality came around, and without so much as a mere touch, cut me into little pieces, leaving me to doubt. Talk about God in His mercy, for if He really does exist, why did He desert me in my hour of need? truly am indeed alone again, naturally. It seems to me that there are more hearts broken in the world that can't be mended, left unattended. What do we do? What do we do? Alone again, naturally. Looking back over the years and whatever else that appears, I remember I cried when my father died, never wishing to hide the tears. And at 65 years old, my mother, God rest her soul, couldn't understand why the only man she had ever loved had been taken, leaving her to start with a heart so badly broken. Despite encouragement from me, no words were ever spoken. And when she passed away, I cried and cried